They thought the barn was just another skeleton of the past. They thought its locked doors guarded only dust and shadows. But Titan knew better. His furious paws ripped at the wood, his barks echoing like thunder, and when officers forced it open, the nightmare truly began. Before we start, make sure to hit like and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. It began on a quiet summer evening in the small town of Willow Creek. Children played in their yards. Neighbors exchanged greetings, and everything felt safe. Ordinary, almost untouched by the chaos of the outside world. But behind the calm, a storm was waiting to break. 7-year-old Daniel Harper had been riding his bike along the narrow gravel road that led toward the old fields. His parents recalled hearing his laughter echo through the twilight. Then suddenly silence. No sound of tires crunching gravel. No cheerful voice calling out, just nothing. At first, his mother thought he had gone inside a friend's house. She knocked on doors, calling his name with a smile that grew thinner each time. By the third house, the smile was gone, replaced with trembling hands and a rising panic. The police arrived quickly. Flashlights swept through the woods, search parties spread across fields, and neighbors gathered, whispering prayers. But every hour that passed without a clue tightened the knot of fear strangling the town. Daniel had vanished without a trace. No bike, no backpack, no footprints on the dusty road. For his family and the people of Willow Creek, that night marked the beginning of a nightmare. Days stretched into nights, and still, there was no sign of Daniel. His disappearance shook Willow Creek like an earthquake, sending waves of fear through every home. Parents clutched their children tighter. Doors that once stayed unlocked were bolted shut, and the once friendly town now felt haunted by suspicion. Flyers with Daniel's smiling face were taped to every lamppost, every storefront, every telephone pole. Candlelight vigils filled the town square, where neighbors held hands and prayed for a miracle. Local news stations camped outside the Harper home, their cameras capturing the tearful pleas of Daniel's parents, begging for answers. Police combed through every lead, but hope seemed to wither with each passing day. A jacket left in the woods turned out to belong to someone else. Footprints near the creek washed away before investigators could confirm if they were Daniel's. Every clue dissolved into disappointment. Frustration gnawed at the officers, but despair was worse. It was then, out of desperation more than strategy, that the decision was made. Bring in the K-9 unit. If human eyes couldn't find what was hidden, maybe a dog's instincts could. And so Titan, the department's most relentless tracker, was called to the case. The search led Titan and his handler to the outskirts of Willow Creek, where farmland stretched into the horizon and silence clung to the air like fog. That was where the barn stood, an aging skeleton of wood and rusted nails, its roof sagging, its doors chained shut with years of dust. Locals whispered that no one had stepped inside for decades. At first, Titan sniffed along the perimeter with calm precision, tail low, nose to the ground. The officers watched closely, waiting, holding their breath for the smallest sign. For several minutes, nothing happened. The barn looked as lifeless as it always had, just another ruin swallowed by time. Then, without warning, Titan froze. His ears snapped forward, his muscles stiffened, and a deep growl rumbled from his chest. In the next instant, he lunged at the barn door, claws raking at the rotting wood. The sound was violent, urgent, like he was trying to claw through to another world. The handler tightened the leash, but Titan refused to back down. He barked wildly, the kind of bark that wasn't just noise, it was alarm, it was desperation. Officers exchanged uneasy glances. Something was inside, something that demanded to be found. The decision came quickly. With flashlights in hand and weapons drawn, 2 officers pried at the heavy chains until they gave way with a metallic snap. The barn's doors groaned open and stale air poured out like a long-buried secret finally exhaling. The beam of the flashlights cut through the barn's darkness, revealing dust dancing in the air like restless spirits. Broken tools lay scattered on the floor, rusted sickles and bent shovels half buried beneath straw that smelled of decay. Cobwebs stretched across the beams like fragile curtains, and every creak of the wooden floor echoed like a whisper. For a moment it looked empty, just a graveyard of forgotten farming days. But Titan knew better. With a sudden surge, he bolted forward, dragging his handler across the barn. His claws tore at a shadowed corner, ripping through piles of hay with frantic urgency. The officers followed, their lights converging on the spot. And then, beneath the straw and dust, something emerged. A small dirt-stained backpack. The color had faded, but the sticker on the flap was unmistakable. It was Daniel's, the very one he had been carrying the day he vanished. A hush fell over the room. One officer knelt down, carefully lifting the bag, his throat tightening as he unzipped it. Inside were a few scattered school papers, a cracked toy car, and a faint smear of something dark along the fabric. The air grew heavier. Titan whined softly, circling the spot, nose pressed to the boards beneath. The handler crouched, listening. There was more here, something hidden deeper. The dog scratched again, this time at the floor itself. And as the officers leaned closer, they realized the wooden boards weren't solid. They were hiding something beneath. The officers exchanged uneasy glances as Titan's claws scraped harder against the floorboards. His growls deepened, his body tense with a warning no one could ignore. Something's under here, one officer muttered, pulling out a crowbar. The wood resisted at first, groaning like it wanted its secret to stay buried. But with one final crack, the boards splintered apart. A rush of damp, foul air escaped, stinging their nostrils. Beneath the floor, a narrow opening yawned into darkness, a trapdoor leading underground. Titan barked furiously at the hole, his tail stiff. His nose pressed forward as though urging them to look. Flashlights pierced the black, revealing a crude cellar. The walls were dirt-packed, the air heavy with mildew, and scattered across the ground were ropes, torn fabric, and rusted chains. The sight froze every man in place. This was no shelter. This was a prison. One officer descended carefully, his boots sinking into damp earth. His beam caught something else, a small shoe lying half buried in the soil. A child's shoe. The silence broke with a sharp intake of breath. "He was here," the officer whispered, voice cracking. Daniel was here. And then another realization settled over them like ice. Old toys, more shoes. Polaroid photographs pinned against the dirt wall. This wasn't about one missing child. The barn hadn't just hidden Daniel's trail. It was the graveyard of countless others. News of the discovery spread through Willow Creek like wildfire. Families gathered at the police station, clutching photographs of their own missing loved ones, desperate for answers. For Daniel's parents, the truth was both devastating and surreal. Their son had been found, alive but terrified, curled in the corner of that underground cell when officers returned with reinforcements. He was weak, his voice barely more than a whisper, but his eyes lit up when he saw Titan. The dog nuzzled him gently, tail wagging as though to say, "You're safe now." That moment broke even the hardest officer in the room. Doctors rushed Daniel to the hospital where his condition stabilized. Though scarred by the ordeal, he was alive, and for his parents that was a miracle beyond words. The barn was sealed off, marked as the scene of one of the darkest crimes in the town's history. Evidence recovered there connected a long-suspected drifter to multiple disappearances across the region. The monster had finally been unmasked, and through it all one truth stood above the rest. Without Titan's relentless instincts, the nightmare would have remained buried. In the eyes of the town, he wasn't just a police dog. He was a savior. They thought the barn was empty. They thought its silence meant nothing. But Titan proved the truth. Behind rotting wood and dust, horrors had waited to be found. His courage gave a child back his future. If this story moved you, like, share, and subscribe for more unforgettable tales.